Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on how to speed up the publishing process with Citavi and NVivo. So with that, I'll go into introductions. So my name's Stacy Penna. I'm the NVivo Community Director here at QSR, and my colleague, Jenny, I'll have her introduce herself.
A lot of you probably work with some type of reference management software and know a little bit about it. Citavi is a little bit different than some of the other programs out there in that it helps you throughout the entire publication process. So these steps that you see here in the middle, where you're taking then your full text of your different articles you're using, or web pages, even books, you can then bring out the information that's important to you and save them as quotes, as comments. You can save ideas in Citavi.
Jenny just talked about how you can work with Citavi, and Citavi is really around your secondary sources, and with NVivo, it's more around your primary sources. So it's just showing how through the publishing process, how when you collect sources, we have office integration, where you're organizing. You can use in NVivo your data files and your code hierarchy.
And this is just kind of another visualization of how Citavi and NVivo kind of work together and where they overlap a little bit. So,
and this is just, so this is in the handout. This is what we're going to be showing you in each of the programs. And we just wanted this as a reference point for you. So if you just remember what we showed you after the webinar. We're going to show you first Citavi in action, and then I'll show you how NVivo can be, you can work with NVivo and Citavi together.
This is Citavi. This is what it looks like when you first start it up. And we're going to go right into a new project down here. And you have two different options at the moment. You have either cloud projects or local projects. Cloud projects are saved online. And then the first thing I'll do is bring in some PDFs that I have. We'll go into the File menu and then choose Import. And I'm going to bring in that folder of PDF files that I have on my desktop. And here I have a few different options. One that's quite useful is this rename with Citavi short title option. That's just going to give your PDFs a more meaningful name. A lot of times you'll download PDF files and they'll just be a string of numbers and letters. And this then will give them names with the author, last name, the year, and title. And so then when you're looking in the folder for those PDFs, you can find them again more easily. And it's important to note with local projects, all of your PDFs stay on your computer. They're just in the Citavi project folder, and you always have access to them. And also with cloud projects, you'll always be able to download your PDFs in case, if you ever do want to switch programs, we don't hold you hostage. You can always get all of your full text out of the program and change if you need to. So right now, Citavi is looking for a unique identifier in the PDF articles, and it's looking for a DOI, PubMed ID, or ArchiveX ID. And when it can find that, then it'll add the information to the project. So I'm going to add those to my project now, and here I can choose if I want to bring in keywords or not. I'll just leave that checked for now. And now we can see our results here. In this case, you can take a look at maybe why that one didn't have a whole lot of information that came in. So for this particular article, this doesn't have one of the identifiers, and so then you don't get as much information coming in. These cases, this can happen if you're working with reports, for example, or other gray literature. If you're working with just kind of basic web pages, a lot of times Citavi then can't find the information. In comparison with here, for example. So here what I could do, because I don't have the full record yet, I can give myself a task. And I'll just say, find full information for this article. And maybe I want to just get this task done today, so I'll add that there. And then that will appear in the task planner. So what we've been looking at here, this is the reference editor, and this is where you have all of your information on your sources. So this is the part of the program that's most like other reference managers. And then you also have the knowledge and tasks workspaces. And so tasks, we just looked at that. You can create tasks that relate to individual references, but then you can also create project tasks. So I might have a submission deadline for, I don't know, journal draft, and that might be sometime next, what's the end of the month. So you can have overarching project tasks. Again, you can move these columns around so you can see what you need to. You can change out these columns as well. So for example, if you don't need this locations column, this is just going to be the call numbers for books and libraries, for example, then you can get rid of that under the columns button. And you have also this very nice advanced selection for your tasks. So if you're working in a team, one thing that's quite nice is that you can assign tasks to your colleagues, and then they can filter out the tasks that have been assigned to them. They can print a list of their tasks, and you can do the same for any tasks assigned to you. And you can also see the status, because here you can change the status. And some things like this one, it's either done or not done usually. But something here, you might have made some progress on your draft. Then you can change that slider. And this is just a good way to kind of keep on top of some of those different research tasks and just kind of see where you are in your project. You can use these project tasks too to schedule writing sessions, for example. So it's a nice way to stay organized. So when you're working with your literature, you always have kind of this idea of what needs to be done with what. Now I'm going to switch to the knowledge organizer workspace here. And we're going to set up a couple categories. So I'm at the very beginning of this project. I've only just found a few PDFs that I think have information that might be useful. So my category system is going to be pretty rudimentary at this point. And if you need to, you can always move these around by drag and drop. So we have our category system set up now, and maybe I want to bring in all of these articles on boredom and creativity into the appropriate category. So I can do that. So we'll just select all of these, and then I can't really see that, so I'll just move this a little bit, then I see that a bit better. So I can just put those in there with drag and drop. And so now I have those there. If I have anything that is about another country, I think I had one. This one's about Germany, so if I need to add a category, I can do that as well. And then maybe we'll go back to all here. Maybe this one I'd want to add. And you can do it with drag and drop, or you can also always just use this context tab and type in the country. So there's usually a couple of places in Citavi where you can add information. So at the moment, we don't have a whole lot of references in our project, but you can imagine when you have hundreds and hundreds of sources that it's nice to then be able to just click on one of these categories and only see the sources on that particular topic. You can, of course, import from databases, and I'll just use PubMed because it's freely accessible. I can click on this little symbol here, and this will appear if you're working in Firefox, Chrome, or Edge. And what we call this is the Citavi picker. It just lets you very easily import web content. And I can see that here because there's the little check mark and then the PDF symbol. And so now when I go back to Citavi, I have that information, and we'll just change over now to the reference tab. And then I have all of the different source information that I'll need for citation later on. One thing to keep an eye out for is when you have open access journals like this one, a lot of times they won't use page numbers. So for example, here down at the bottom, it might be a little hard to see on your screens, but there's, instead of page numbers, well, you have your page numbers, then they start at 1, but that's because there's a special article number. So instead of being a journal that has pages 1 through, 300 throughout the year, something like that. When you have these, when certain journals are published online, they have what's called an article number. And depending on how the coding is and in this case, I think this came in from PubMed, sometimes that ends up in the page range field when you import. So this is something then that we want to change, and we'll put that now in the article number field, and then we can change those page numbers. So I think this is a good reminder that reference management software isn't magic. It's only as good as the metadata it pulls in. And even if you're not working with Citavi, I think it's a good thing to keep in mind that it's always very good to double check what's coming in. It's, of course, very convenient that things come in automatically, but just giving it a quick check over is always really important before you go to write and then to create a bibliography. Because if you have any issues with the information in your project, that'll just go out then into your paper. So no one wants that, and especially not when you're kind of at the end of the writing up phase. And yeah, just better to kind of nip that in the bud from the start. And what you can do to make sure that you do double check everything is you can give yourself a task again. So maybe for, so these three, I know, because I entered the information, that those should be fine. Well, the one I have to look up the information. And this one then I could give myself a task to double check that information. In this case, I've already kind of done that check, but just so you can see how that works. And then, of course, that will show up here in the task planner. And that would be something that, when you don't really have this is all pretty similar to other programs you might have worked with if you've worked with reference management software. And now we're going to get into what I think is one of the best things in Citavi and most useful. And that's the ability to pick out information from the articles that you're working with. And that's, of course, very useful when you're working on a small laptop screen. At the moment, I'm just going to leave it like this because then you can see also this quotations tab over here. And so you would be going along and reading your article. And then when you find something that you think is interesting, you can just highlight that. And maybe this is useful for you for your definition section. So you might say, you might label this then, and you can think of this field here as being kind of a label for that item you've saved. And we'll just say difference between state and trait boredom. If you know you're going to be citing this word for word, you can also already give it the quotation marks you're going to need. And it's just over here. And we support a few different languages there. And then you can already add it to the category that you think you might use this in. So the section of the paper that you might use this piece of information in. And that would be that one there. And then when I'm ready, I can just click OK, and it'll save that. You can, of course, also just highlight anything that you think is interesting, but the highlighter will just stay as kind of an overlay on the PDF. It won't add what we call a knowledge item to this quotations tab. So if you want to quickly read through an article and just pick out information you think is interesting and then go back later on and see what you want to actually save in your project, one thing you can do is just highlight whatever you think is important. And then on a second go through of the article, you could add items as a quotation, for example, or add a task. But we'll leave that one for now. And let's see, here maybe I've found a section where it's talking about quarantine. So that might be a spot where I decide to use a different type of knowledge item. And here, for example, maybe I'll say, I'll use a comment type and then just rename this. And then you could enter your comment. I'm not sure why the authors don't discuss factor, and then you could put whatever it was. So when you're reading the text, then you can kind of interact with it as well and save any questions you have. And these questions then might also change the course of your research or change your research design. So that can be quite handy to work with the comments as well when you're reading. We also have indirect quotations, summaries, and tasks. And the indirect quotations, that's just going to be like when you paraphrase a section of the text in your own words. So then you wouldn't be putting it in quotation marks like here. And summaries, that's usually maybe if you're working with a book in PDF format and you want to create a summary maybe for the whole chapter. And the benefit for that is if it's maybe a seminal text in your field, when you have those summaries, if you think you're going to be citing that again sometime in your career, then you have that summary already and can go back to that. You wouldn't have to necessarily reread the whole chapter again because you've done that work already. Here, I might want to add a keyword. Keywords can be thought of as tags. So they aren't hierarchical like the categories. You can't have like sub-keywords and sub-keywords. So they're more really just like another access point to the knowledge item. And here I think we'll put this in our, well, actually we'll put this in our China category and then click OK. So just going to add maybe one more here. And here maybe I'd have another comment. Here maybe something about, yeah. Okay, and here then we could add that wherever we think it might be useful. So maybe this is actually something I want to talk about in my introduction, so I'd add that there. And of course, when you're reading, you might think of new ideas as well, and you can add those with this thought button up at the very top, and that's available in any part of the program, so any workspace you're in. And this can be really, anything you want, and it's not tied to a specific reference. So you just add your idea in there, and any version you have, just put that as an example, and then you can put that into your category. And maybe now I'm thinking about study design, so that would go into methods. And maybe I actually realize, oh, I need a new category here. So then I would add maybe something like survey instruments. Maybe I've thought, okay, I want to definitely do a survey, and I can click OK. You can also save images, so I think that's important to show. So for example, I can use this snapshot tool and then just bring in an image quotation. There are keyboard shortcuts for all of these, so you don't always have to just go up here with your mouse. So you can see those keyboard shortcuts when you hover over. So for example, here, that would be a D. So here for this image, I can add a caption, and then that caption would later appear in Word. And when I would insert this into my Word document, I would get the citation, of course, for that image. Okay, and if I don't add something to a category, I can always do that later on in the knowledge organizer. One last thing you can do then is add tasks to your document. And let's say I want to discuss this whole, well, maybe not the whole discussion section, but maybe these first few paragraphs of the discussion section with my colleagues in my team. You can highlight that. And if you need to skip columns, you can hold down the control key while doing the highlight. You'll see this little plus sign that appears, and then you can continue highlighting it there. And now I can give this a task, and you have a few predefined ones. So discuss actually is the one I want. I'll choose that. And then I could assign this to a colleague. And in this case, in the dropdown, it's just me because I'm the only one in this project. When you want to use your references from Citavi and NVivo, it's quite easy to do. You just need to export and then choose what you want to export, and then choose NVivo as the export filter. And then that will have exported. I think I exported it to my PDF file. Yep. So that file will then look like that.
So now I just want to show you how Citavi can be worked with NVivo, how it's integrated. So for some of you, you might not be using the latest version yet, or it might be new to you. So I just want to give you a little tour of it. So this was released last March, and you can see the different tabs up here. We do have a navigation panel that's broken up into 3 sections. So the first section is the import section, which helps you bring in your data and files. And then the organize section is all around organizing your coding, your cases, your notes. And then the last section is in regards to exploring your data, so your queries, visuals, and reports. And here, this is your workspace. So the first thing I want to do is I want to bring in those articles that Jenny just exported from Citavi. So I want to organize my files and create a new folder called literature. So I keep it separate from my own data. So my own data here, I've collected interviews, so that's my primary data. And now I'm going to bring in more of the secondary data, the literature. Or sources. So to do that, I'm going to go to import and go to bibliography, and you can see Citavi is one of the choices. So I just click on Citavi, and here is the Citavi file that Jenny had exported, and I'm going to bring it in to NVivo. I have this wizard, so I like to do it by name of author and year when the sources come in, and I want to save it to my literature folder that I just created, and I'll import. So you can see here the articles have come in from Citavi. Also, what has come in is the references and information about the references. So what type of reference, the authors, the date, year of publication, and so on. And this becomes helpful later. I'll show you where we can do some queries to look across what different articles said within different years based on the coding we do. And then also when you bring in the file from Citavi, it also will create memos based on what was in Citavi. So for example, the abstract here, the keywords, and notes you might have written. So I can do a couple things. One is I can go right to the sources and I can start reading through them and coding them in NVivo. Right, so down here, and so here I can see they're talking about many changing, boring environment and so on. So if I want, I can go to codes, and because I'm working with the literature, I want to keep it separate from the themes I'm finding in my own data. So I'm going to create a new folder again under codes and call it literature. And then in this case, I can highlight what I want to code. I can drag and drop and put it in here, and I'll call this boring, for example. And now that section has been coded into the code, and you can see I can go right back to the original source to see what was coded there too. So I could do that. I could go through my journal articles and read through them one at a time. But what's nice about NVivo is that it can jumpstart your analysis. So I could go to explore, and one thing I might want to do is do a word frequency just to see what are the words that are in the literature sources. So I'm going to select the folder because I just want to look at my literature here. And I'm going to ask it to show the 100 most frequently used words. I can do exact matches or stem words or synonyms, and I'll run the query. And so it's giving me a list of words and their count. I can also add a word if I wanted to the stop word list here. And then I have visual, so I can go to the word cloud tab, and this will give me a word cloud showing me the larger the word, the more often it's used in the interviews. And so I can see here they're talking about creativity. So maybe I want to learn more about what was said in the article. So I can right click on creativity and run a text search right from the word cloud. and showing me that these articles mention creativity. I can click on the references and actually see, what was said about creativity here. And I also have one other visual that I find helpful. So I'm going to click on the word tree tab. And this is showing me the 5 words before or after creativity. I could change that, but I'll keep it for now. And so something that is standing out is trait creativity. So, okay, well, let's see what that's all about. So I can right click right here and run a text search right from the word tree too. And so now I can see the different sources that talk about trait creativity. Now, typically for me, this is not enough information for me to understand the context around it. So I'm going to ask NVivo to broaden the context, and I'll run the query again. And now I get more information around the 2 words. So now NVivo has just done a lot of work for me. So instead of me going through and finding trait creativity on my own in an article, I can ask NVivo to save the results as a code. So I'm going to ask it to put it in my literature code, and I'm going to call it trait creativity. I do recommend that you give your codes descriptions, because you could do a code book later if you do. And that's created this code for me. And if I go into literature, you'll see that here listed with 21 references, which means different parts have been coded. So that's one way to jumpstart your looking across all your different articles. Another way is I could also ask the software to autocode. So I'm just going to select all my articles. I'll go up to autocode, and NVivo does this in a couple different ways. So one is identifying themes. Another is it will go through and find a sentiment analysis within the articles. And then here, using existing coding patterns, if you code about 15% of your articles, NVivo picks up how you're coding, and then we'll code the rest. So I'm just going to go to identifying themes, and it's going through my articles here. It's an algorithm looking at noun and noun phrases. And so you can see I have this coding hierarchy based on that. And I'll go next, and I can ask NVivo to code by sentences or paragraphs. It does put in a separate folder, which is helpful because I probably don't want it in my own coding yet. I want to probably pick and choose what I bring in to my own coding. So typically people use the autocoding at the beginning of analysis or looking across their sources. Just gives them a bird's eye view of it, or at the end, maybe I want to see, did I reach saturation? So here you can see this hierarchical chart showing me the top code and then the subcodes. You can click on the boxes to get to what they're talking about. And then it also gives me a table. So it's showing me the different articles and showing me what's the different themes that it's picked up. And then if I go to auto-coded themes here, you can see they're listed here under the code. So in this case, I might want to bring creative into my own coding. So I can click on it, copy it. I tend to copy, and I'll bring it under literature and paste it. So now it's part of what I want to write about in regards to my literature review. Just want to show you can use notes in NVivo. So I can create my own memo, which could be helpful when I want to think about analyzing what I've been coding. I do like to insert a date time stamp just to keep track of my thoughts. And what's nice is I could actually even have the code that I created here right next to the memo. So it helps me go back and forth and look at it and start thinking about the analysis and what I want to write about creativity. I also just want to show you another type of query. So here I'm going to go to Explore and Queries and go to the Cross tab. And I'm going to bring in codes that I did for the literature. So I'm just going to pick all these. And I want to look at it based on my references. And in this case, I want to look across the year that other references were published. So I'll run the query. And you can see I'm actually going to change it to coding references and then do a heat map. So this can be helpful. Maybe you want to see have this changed over time. So it's sort of interesting. We have a lot here in the year 2020. Is that due to the pandemic, or is there other reasons to it? So it's just a way to look at their sources in a different light. Now I can also click on the chart here and create a chart and export that to put in a report and so on. So with that, the last thing I want to do, because I want to have Jenny show you, because to me this is really one of the key things with Citavi to help you with your writing process. So I've done the analysis here in NVivo on what I want to write in regards to creative or creativity for my literature review. So I'm going to export this code. So I'm going to export this code to a Word document. And you can see we have a Citavi add-on in the Word document. And so I'm going have Jenny show you how to work with the Word document in Citavi. So I'm just going to make her presenter again.
Okay, can you see my screen, Stacy?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah, so when you've exported from NVivo, you can link up the document with your Citavi project. And that makes sense, for example, if you need to insert some citations for this literature here, and if you also want to insert any of your notes that you took in Citavi. And one thing that can be quite helpful for that is inserting your category system as an outline in your Word document. Just to maybe give you a little overview here of what you see. This is the Citavi pane, and you have your references here. So if you just need a simple citation, that's where you would go to insert that. And you can change this around too. So if you're someone who doesn't really think you're going to use the category system, you can view by persons, by title, etc. And you also have the knowledge items that you've collected. And then we also have this chapters view. At the moment, this is empty, but what I can do is insert my category system, or I can insert even just a subset of that. And in this case, because maybe I'm just working on my literature review right now, I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'll just insert that. You can insert your headings along with all of the pieces of information you've gathered from your reading, or you can do that as you're writing, which is the way I tend to prefer, because when you gather all these different bits of information, you might later find that some of your notes you're not going to use, or they're no longer so relevant for what you want to say in your writing. So we'll just do our current category and subcategories. And then here now, this looks a little messy, so let's make that look a little nicer. We're just going to give that some numbered headings, and then we can keep those different chapters a little bit more organized. And now, when I click into a section that has something either in knowledge or references, so for example, this one here, then I see those different references, and I see my quotations or comments or my own ideas. And I can just double click to insert that, and then I have my citation as well, along with the page number, and can close that off with the period there. And then, of course, this will also insert an entry into the bibliography at the end. Right now, this is just the Citavi default style, so we'll change that to a different one. Let's use APA, for example. And you'll notice that this is then going to update how that appears here. And you can, of course, switch between types of styles as well. So now I've changed this to a numerical style, and that's going to change that style here at the end as well. You can, of course, work with Citavi similarly to other reference management programs. You'll be writing, and then you want to insert a reference, or maybe you want to insert a reference with multiple, or you'll refer to multiple sources at once, and then you can just double click to insert them one after another. If I move these around and cut and paste, depending on the style, Citavi will then update those numbers. Yeah, so this now, it looks like it should. Everything's in the order that I think this particular style, I'd have to double check. Some of these number styles, they're in the order of insertion, and some are in the order of the author last name. But if we want, we can change this back. Probably most of you are using, I guess, one of these in-text citation styles with the author names. And we have a lot of other styles as well. So you're not limited to those 4 that I have here. There's those are just the ones that I've most recently used, but I can choose from many others, and you can narrow this down a bit too. And when you're looking in Citavi itself for a style, you also have an advanced citation style finder. So if you have something that's from your department and you think, oh, this isn't going to match any already available style, sometimes you can use the citation style finder and then find something very similar, and then it's just a matter of making a change or two in the citation style editor in Citavi. But let's see, just choose here, for example. You can see then what that looks like and apply it, and Citavi will change things as necessary. And if you need to edit a citation, so for example, maybe this one, I want to make a change, I can do that. If I want to delete something out of here, for example, That's pretty quick to do. If you need to add page numbers, you could do that as well. For whatever reason, it's a little slow to update today. You can always force Citavi to update, either there if it's not pulling in references, or here up on the refresh tab. It's a little bit slow. So I'm guessing when you're trying it out, yeah, I think my whole computer today is a little bit slow, so apologies for that. But you'll then see that updates as well. And I think maybe, for whatever reason, they might have found a bug. This is also our next version that's coming out in May, so could be that there's something I need to tell the developers about. Anyway, when you try it out with the current version, you'll see that it's you can change things as you want, and Citavi updates. One other thing that's quite useful is if you have, for example, an image you want to insert. So let's look at, I think we had that one image quotation. Yeah, and we didn't put that in the category. But let's say we wanted that to be here. You can just double click, you have that image, and then you have the caption you created and the citation here. And of course, you can insert your own ideas as well. This chapter view is very helpful because then you're always just looking at what you need for a particular section. And here we don't have a ton of references, but let's say you've been working on a project for a little bit longer, and I'll just show you quickly our example project that you can also take a look at and use to test Citavi and see how it works. So here, for example, when you've been doing some research, and here this project we have about 81 sources, then you see that quickly you have quite a lot of information, and then being able to keep that really organized in Word when you're writing is a big plus. And so then you're not always having to look at everything you have and go through these long lists of knowledge items and references. You really can stay focused just on what you need for a particular section. Yeah, so that's kind of it. Of course, you can integrate this with what you pull in from NVivo too. So if you need, for example, a formatted reference, you can just double click to insert that. But I think I'll end there since I've gone over time a little bit. And Stacy, I think you had a couple slides at the end to show. So the way you could do that then is under File and Copy to Cloud. So you can create a backup there. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is that it won't be synchronized with your local version. So you really should think of it as kind of a copy as a backup in that case. If you think you will be using cloud projects a lot or would want to use cloud projects a lot, you can also work offline. So if, for example, your internet goes out, as long as you're still logged in to Citavi, then you can continue working and Citavi will save a local file. And once you're connected again with the Citavi cloud, then it's going to synchronize those up. But yeah, if you're working mainly with a local project and just sometimes want to have a copy as a backup in the cloud, it's just File, Copy to Cloud.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you, Jenny, on a great presentation of Citavi. And there's a quick survey at the end if you don't mind answering. There's just 2 questions. We'd appreciate it. And thank you very much for your time today.
Una vez entonces que nosotros ya hemos analizado los documentos, hemos seleccionado las que van a ser citas textuales y hemos inclusive seleccionado aquellos fragmentos que los vamos a convertir en paráfrasis, ahora sí, digamos, podríamos retocar los últimos detalles para ya llevar el proyecto a Microsoft Word. Voy a irme rápidamente a esta primera nota que tengo y me voy a dirigir a la sección de citas y comentarios. Vemos, por ejemplo, aquí en este momento que existe una cita indirecta. Como se observa, no tenemos ningún texto y esto en realidad lo que hay que hacer es corregirlo. Vamos a ir directamente a la cita indirecta y vemos que el texto es este a la fecha. Tienen casos confirmados 123 de los 125 municipios de Jalisco y de ellos se reportan 89 municipios con casos activos. Lo que estoy haciendo entonces en este momento es identificar la cita indirecta, pero falta como tal la paráfrasis. Es decir, las citas directas al final de cuentas nos sirven para construir una paráfrasis. Listo, he realizado ya una paráfrasis. En realidad lo que estoy haciendo es parafrasear estos datos que aparecen aquí. Listo, ya ha quedado como tal la paráfrasis dentro de la cita indirecta. Cada vez que hagamos citas indirectas, deberíamos estar integrando el texto de nuestra paráfrasis. Quiero mencionar también que debemos de definir con claridad si dentro de Citavi vamos a poner las comillas de las citas textuales, por ejemplo, en este caso la voy a agregar así, o eso lo vamos a hacer dentro de Word. Es importante tenerlo claro porque todas las citas textuales deben de tener las comillas. Voy a revisar finalmente que el estilo de cita ya esté preconfigurado con APA, en este caso está APA séptima edición y listo. Voy a elegir investigación colaborativa, que es el proyecto que me interesa ahorita. Listo, ya se han cargado las categorías, los títulos e inclusive vemos que aquí mismo están las citas textuales, las citas indirectas, etcétera, etcétera. Si no tenemos una plantilla, podríamos insertar todas las estructuras que habíamos construido con las categorías, así como a su vez todas las categorías propias del proyecto de investigación. Los títulos aquí aparecen de alguna manera con categorías, nos está diciendo que son 5 títulos sin categorías, no aparecen dentro de las categorías porque no les di en general una categoría, eso es algo que no me interesa. Lo que sí me interesa es que en conocimiento todo esté completamente categorizado. Lo que haré entonces a continuación es utilizar esta lógica en la cual no tenemos la plantilla. Para ello, simplemente voy a elegir mi primera categoría, le voy a dar botón derecho y enseguida me voy a ir a la función de insertar categorías y elementos de conocimiento. Yo lo que quiero en este momento es que todo mi trabajo se vacíe directamente en Microsoft Word. Entonces, para ello voy a seleccionar todas las categorías. Una vez que he hecho esto, el software va a empezar a hacer lo suyo, Microsoft Word va a empezar a hacer lo suyo, y entonces vemos cómo de manera automática se están insertando todas las estructuras, todas las categorías de estructura y también todas las categorías de contenidos. Esto nos facilita enormemente el trabajo porque ya vemos una estructura clara que inclusive integra a su vez las referencias en el formato APA de séptima edición que yo había seleccionado previamente. Observamos que también las citas textuales están ya citadas como tal de manera correcta. Por ejemplo, vemos que aparece el apellido y luego el año. Faltarían algunos detallitos, por ejemplo, de corrección de la página, el número de página, pero ya son detalles mínimos que podemos estar revisando poco a poco. Aquí, por ejemplo, si se ha integrado, en realidad lo que está sucediendo acá es que debe de ser un documento que no tiene numeración de página y pues simplemente nos agrega. Pero aquí, en el caso de los libros, estamos viendo que sí aparecen de manera correcta las páginas. Entonces, inclusive hasta eso está citado de manera correcta. Ok, ¿qué prosigue ya en estos términos? Pues depurar lo que esté mal. Por ejemplo, vemos aquí que estas citas indirectas no nos están funcionando porque no realizamos paráfrasis, no las construimos como tal dentro de nuestro proyecto de Citavi. Eso en una investigación normal no pasaría porque deberíamos construir todas las citas indirectas con una paráfrasis. Lo que en principio deberíamos hacer a continuación es simplemente empezar con la redacción. En este proyecto de investigación establecemos un análisis documental, etc. Entonces ya vamos a escribir, vamos a hacer nuestra propia redacción donde estemos vinculando estas citas que ya están ahí. Y lo importante es que ya están situadas en el lugar preciso, en el lugar correcto donde yo las requiero. De forma que simplemente hago las articulaciones entre mi redacción y las citas textuales y sigo simplemente construyendo más y más información. Se puede ser, digamos, representativamente un texto mío que esté articulando la cita anterior, ¿no? Damos un salto de párrafo, etcétera, etcétera. Seguimos con nuestras articulaciones de idea y listo. Hacemos la investigación de una manera muchísimo más fácil. Este proceso nos deja ahora o nos permite no estar saliendo, por ejemplo, a notas que tengamos a mano o a notas que hayamos dejado en un documento de Word, porque esto es completamente ineficiente, ¿no? Probablemente alguno de nosotros esté acostumbrado a tomar notas en un cuaderno. Está bien, es un método que ha servido, pero a estas alturas, con el uso de la tecnología, se facilita mucho más. Si tuviéramos las notas en nuestro cuaderno, ahorita en este momento estaríamos escribiendo cita textual tras cita textual, inclusive con la posibilidad de cometer errores en la transcripción. Y bajo esta lógica del funcionamiento de Citavi, lo único que hacemos es insertarlas. Aquí acabo de mostrar entonces la primera opción, es decir, cuando no tenemos una plantilla y queremos insertar todo de un mismo momento. Pero ¿qué pasa si yo requiero abrir una plantilla o yo tengo una plantilla y simplemente quiero ir insertando sección por sección? En este momento tengo abierta una plantilla de trabajo que probablemente sea requerida para mis estudiantes. Tenemos entonces ya la estructura, previamente ha estado construyéndose y ahora lo que sigue es encontrar las secciones donde debe de haber una redacción importante como tal. Vemos, por ejemplo, que aquí en marco conceptual nos está pidiendo una extensión, por ejemplo, de una partilla. En estas secciones es donde se debe de argumentar como tal este proceso que hemos estado construyendo en la investigación. Y ahora abro el proyecto que necesito, que en este momento ya está abierto porque lo tenía previamente abierto en el otro proyecto, y ahora me voy a la sección de conocimiento. Me posiciono en marco conceptual, le doy clic aquí dentro de mi casilla y ahora lo que sigue es darle simplemente un doble clic. Observamos que al darle un doble clic se pone mi nivel, es decir, este nivel que tiene que ver con el subtítulo. En este momento esta situación no me sirve porque ya tengo el título previamente, entonces voy a deshacer la acción y simplemente ahora voy a darle un doble clic a la cita. Y observamos que ahora sí se ha insertado esta cita. Vemos que ya aparece el apellido y el año. Y entonces en principio nosotros tendríamos que estar desarrollando, por ejemplo, con un texto introductorio, etcétera, etcétera, y vamos a hacer lo mismo. Vamos a estar articulando mis ideas con las citas textuales que yo tengo aquí. Entonces, por ejemplo, ya tendría ahí una cita textual, podría inclusive explicar esta idea de la cita textual por medio de un texto mío y también vinculándolo, etcétera, etcétera. Hacemos lo mismo con las siguientes citas. Por ejemplo, aquí voy a supuestamente escribir un texto y ahora adelante voy a posicionarme en otra de las citas y le voy a dar un doble clic. Vemos que ha pasado el mismo proceso, se ha insertado esa cita de manera directa. ¿Qué es lo que sucede cuando nosotros hacemos esto? ¿O qué pasa, por ejemplo, con la bibliografía? Hace rato, con un solo clic, sí se insertó todo, ¿no? Como lo vimos. Ahora también se está insertando la bibliografía, pero hay que tener claridad cómo justamente se nos está insertando. Observamos que esas referencias bibliográficas aparecen al final de todo el documento. Es decir, aquí, en la plantilla, previo a la inserción de estas dos citas que me aparecen ya, por cierto, con una flecha en color verde, no estaba esta sección. Pero ahora sí, ya me aparece. Bajo esta lógica, lo único que podría hacer es quitar esta sección y listo. Ya está como tal esto de manera coherente. Entonces, cuando nosotros insertamos, por ejemplo, una cita textual, voy a poner ahorita en esta sección de interpretación una cita, por ejemplo, de interpretación. Esta que me interesa que está en el apartado de interpretación. Le voy a dar entonces un doble clic y vamos a ver que a continuación la bibliografía de Morales 2009 se va a agregar hacia el final. Yo no tengo que hacer nada, esto es un proceso automático y en realidad simplifica bastante este proceso de construcción del informe. Entonces, cada vez que yo inserte una nueva cita, no me tengo que estar preocupando, digamos, por las referencias bibliográficas porque ya se van a insertar de manera automática. Una última cuestión que me gustaría agregar ya para cerrar esta serie de videos es que cuando estamos trabajando en Microsoft Word podemos también trabajar de manera colaborativa. Es decir, este proyecto probablemente lo desarrollamos de manera colaborativa, que esa era justamente la idea, y ahora también este documento de Word lo podríamos seguir trabajando de manera colaborativa. Para ello, lo único que tenemos que hacer es subir nuestro documento en la nube de Microsoft y entonces compartir ese documento para que sea editable, por ejemplo, en la web.
So hi everyone, thanks for joining me today, and thanks AlphaSoft for inviting me to present. So I'm going to be talking about how to speed up the publishing process by using Citavi and NVivo. So first off, so what I'll be discussing today is introducing Citavi and NVivo. So we're talking about how using Citavi and NVivo can help with the publishing process. I'll demo Citavi and then how Citavi integrates with NVivo. So first off, this is sort of interesting data that our QSR research director, Silvana Di Gregorio, found in Scopus. So when we searched for articles that cite NVivo, there was over 15,000. And the reason I bring this up is if you're doing any type of qualitative or mixed methods research, you can probably find an example somewhere where people used NVivo, because people are always asking us, how do I use NVivo for grounded theory or for mixed methods? And so these are good sources to look into. And when we look at the top 4 QDA solutions out there, including NVivo, we are cited 63% more of the time in articles. Now, when we're using Citavi for our referencing and writing solution, people use it in these ways. So it helps you search through your databases, whether you have your own PDF files or catalogs, or you're going to websites to find your resources or references. And it can bring in references and full text. It also will help you analyze those by helping you, pick out quotes or comments that you want to bring into your literature. Now, just to show how NVivo and Citavi can help you with your publishing and writing process, so both softwares can help you collect sources. So Citavi has this great, it's called a picker. I'll show you how to use that, where you can get articles from your databases or on the web. So now what I'll do is I'll go first into Citavi and then show how the cloud projects are great if you're working as a team, because then you can share the Citavi projects. And it comes in. So here I have my blank Citavi project, and I'll show you the layout as we go, because it'll make more sense as I add things. So first I'm going to go to references here, and I want to import some of my references that I already have in a folder on creativity. So I'm going to go to import, and they are PDF files. So I'm going to choose that. And I want to find the folder. So I'll browse, and I have it under documents. And I want to bring in this whole folder, and I'm copying it into Citavi. And I do want to bring all these in, and you can see that it's getting it ready to be brought into Citavi. So I'm going to ask Citavi to bring all these in. So I'm going to add to project, and I do want to bring in the keywords too, because that might be helpful to me at some point. So you can see here now the layout. So I have under references, I have all my articles. It's showing me the metadata here, the author, the title, where it came from, the volume, the year it was published. Typically, I need to make this larger so I can read it, but then the article comes in too on the right. And so in this case, before I start reading the articles, I want to start setting up my outline for the article I'm writing about creativity. So to do that, I'm going to go to the knowledge organizer here, and I'm just going to start setting up categories. So I know I'm going to have an introduction. All right, so now I have that organized, and now I want to go back to my references, and I want to start reading through them. So I'm going to make this, I'm just going to collapse this so I can read it better. I'll just make this larger. Actually, I want to go to this one. So I want to go down, and I'm going to just start reading through here, and I want to go materials and methods. So I'm like, okay, so this is, I think, going to be important for my methods section that I just created my knowledge organizer. So I'm going to highlight it, and I have different options here. So I could create this as a direct quote, which would be, I'd write from the article, an indirect quote. I can do a summary or a comment. So in this case, I'm going to create this as a summary, and you can see it's highlighted in green, and I can give it a name. So it already says it's participants and the procedure. So I'll have a title of that, so I'll know what it's about. And then I could write my own summary about this right here. So this is important. So I could type that in. I can also then right away put it into the method section here, so that I know that it's right there. So if I go to the knowledge organizer, you can see I have it right there in the methods. But I could also go through and create. So maybe I'll do this as a direct quote, and I want to put this in this case, I'm going to put it under creativity, and you'll see that again in the knowledge organizer. But I also, while I'm doing this, I'm thinking about, okay, I need to think about, I just want to go to the reference. I want to also maybe assign tasks to either my team members or myself as I go and work with it in this project. So maybe I want to go here, and I want to assign myself a task about this. So they're talking about data analysis, and I want to look at more, I want to review more, so I can create my own review more data on this. And I'm going to do it as a medium task. And I want to make sure I do this by November 30th. So this has been assigned to me. And when I go to tasks, you'll see it's located there. But I could also assign team members tasks. So maybe one thing I want to do is make sure that with this, that we're going through all the metadata. So that to make sure that this is, I have all the important information I need to assign that in this reference section to make sure that within Citavi, the numbers are correct, the page numbers, all that is correct. So I might assign that to a team member. And in this case, I don't have it set up for a team in the cloud, but I could do that if I wanted to. So I could assign it to somebody else. So that's when I bring PDFs in myself. I already have them in a folder, but I can also bring in references from the web. So here I'm on Google Scholar. So I want to bring this in. So you can see the little Citavi symbol here. So that means this is the Citavi picker. So it's an add-on you can put on your browser. So I'll just go here and I'll click on the Citavi symbol, and it's already brought that into my Citavi project. So you can see here, it's right here. So that's the article. So it brings in all the references here. And it also shows me the article that I can read. So again, that's really handy. So you could go to any database, PubMed, EBSCO, anything that you have a license for, and bring in the articles you want here. I did want to show you one more thing. I forgot to show you that how to also bring in images. So there's a lot of charts in this resource, so a reference. So I can click on the little symbol here, and I can pick this image quotation will come in. And again, I can add this to a category. So in this case, I want to add it to click OK. And then again, when I go to the knowledge organizer, you'll see that there. So that's pretty handy. It has all a lot of information underneath it, and then I can bring that into my final report or publication. So this is a high-level view of what Citavi can do, but you can see how it can be really helpful because it brings in all your references that you need. It can organize those. You can start thinking about what you want to put into the final paper, organize it, and then also bring in the references by direct quote, indirect, or summary into the knowledge organizer. And then also you could assign yourself tasks or your team tasks to keep you organized throughout your process of your writing process. So now what I want to do is I want to export this project so I can bring it into NVivo. So to do that, I'm going to go to references here and go to export. And I do want to bring all 5 in. So I'll go to next. And I want to bring it into the NVivo format. So I want to bring it on my desktop here. Oh, I didn't make a name. Okay, so export was complete. Great. So now I'll go into NVivo. So with NVivo, I'm going to create a new project. And just to orientate you to NVivo, so in NVivo, we have 3 different sections in the navigation panel. So one is all about the data that you're going to import. So that could be your own data, your interviews, focus groups. But in this case, I'm going to import the literature I want to analyze. It has an organization section, which is all about helping you organize your coding, the cases, your units of analysis, the notes you might want to write, like memos. And then the explore section helps you with queries and visualization and reports. The white space is your working space. And then up here, you have different tabs to help you work within the software. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to data, and typically I will have different files folders. So I'm going to create a new folder and call this literature because I'm going to bring in the literature from Citavi. But a lot of times I'd have my own data. Quite commonly, I would have interviews too. I'd import. So I can start organizing my my project here. So in this case, what I want to do is I want to go to import because I want to bring in that Citavi project. And then I go to bibliography, and I'm going to choose Citavi in this case, the reference management software I'm working with. And here's that project that I exported from Citavi. So I'll open it. And I like to name it by author and date when it comes into NVivo, the references. And I also want to save it to my literature folder. And then I'll import. And you can see that the PDFs have come in. So when it gets imported into NVivo, it does a few things. So it imports the actual PDFs, but it also, if we go to our file classifications and go to references, it also brings in that metadata that was in Citavi. So the year it was published, the journal article, the page number. So you have all that information, and that becomes quite helpful. I'll show you later with some queries we can do. And oops, I need to do that. And then it also does one other thing. It brings into the memo section. So if we had any like that, I'll bring in the abstract from Citavi. We had the keywords or any other maybe notes I had written about the article, which I hadn't done, so those didn't come in. But you can see what automatically comes in from Citavi. Because sometimes people actually like doing the abstracts in NVivo and looking at those first to see what's key before they go into an article. Now in NVivo, I could automatically just open up a PDF and start reading through it and deciding what are key things I want to go and read. So here, if I go in this article, so here, states of boredom, so measurement. So maybe I want to highlight that, and I could easily right click and say code selection, and I'd call this boredom and code selection. And then when I go to codes, you'll see it's listed right there. And so when I open up the code, it will show me exactly what I had coded there, and it will always take me back to the original source if I want to check that. Now I could do that, I could read through it, but that there's a lot of ways to jumpstart your analysis in NVivo. So typically what I do before I open up all, the articles one at a time, what I would do is I would go to the Explore tab and I would run a word frequency based on these. So I could select the folder. So in this case, I want all the literature, and I'm going to do the 100 most frequently used words. And so you can see this better, my options. I could do exact matches, stem words, or synonyms. In this case, I'll just do exact. And oops. Okay, now we have 100, and I'll run the query. So it's showing me the top 100 words in the references. I could, if I wanted to add one to the stop words list, I could do that. So there, the stop words list automatically has like and the to those kind of words, and I can sort of explore the references by creating a visual called a word cloud. So the word cloud is showing me the larger the word, the more often it's used in the references. So there's some interesting things here. They're talking about creativity is pretty big. So let me see. I want to go and see what people are saying about creativity. So I'm going to right click on it and run a text search on creativity. And so I can see, I say 4 out of the 5 articles mentioned creativity. It will actually show me the references, like with what they actually said about creativity. But there's one other visual I really like. So this visual is a word tree. So it's showing me the 5 words before and after creativity. So for example, if I click on low, it shows where that's coming from, creativity activity. And if I go down here, let's see what else is saying. Assessment, creativity during different times, have in individuals, and so on. So I could maybe say, so they're the traits of creativity. That might be of interest to me. So I'm going to click on traits and right click again and run another text search, and the software will help me see what did they say in regards to trait and creativity. So again, I get all the references that are talking about this. Now, typically this is not enough information for me, 5 words before and after, so I like to broaden the context with the coding spread to. So now I get a paragraph so I can read, understand better what they're talking about. Now, because the software just did a lot of work for me, instead of me going through all the references and trying to find this phrase, I'm going to save it as a code. So I'm going to select and put it in my codes folder. I could give it a description and I click OK. And then you'll see, so you can see the code is created and now it's in my codes right here. So there's 21 references to this topic. So that's one way to jumpstart. Another way is NVivo also has auto coding. So if I go here to all the references and I pick all of them, I'm now going to go to auto code. Now there's 3 choices for auto coding: auto code by theme, or you could auto code by sentiment, or we have existing coding patterns. So if you code about 15% of your references, NVivo will pick up what you're coding and learn from that and help you code the rest. But I'm going to identifying themes, and I'll go to next. So it's going through all my references and it's finding noun and noun phrases to create codes. So you can see the list of the codes and the subcodes. I don't have to bring all this in. I could, if I wanted to unclick one. And I'm going to go to next, and I could either code by sentences or paragraphs. I'll just stick with sentences right there. And it does put it in a special folder, so it keeps the auto coding away from your own coding, which typically is helpful because you might not want to bring all that into your own coding. You might want to just pick some. So I'll finish, and it's going to give me a couple of visuals once it gets done analyzing this. So first, I get a hierarchical chart, which is sort of a nice visual, so I could go and see what are the key nouns and noun phrases when people talk about boredom or in the references. I could always double click on a cell and it will take me to the coding. I also have a chart or table, which I like seeing because it shows all the different references, and it highlights with the heat map what are the key free codes here that the software picked out. So analysis boredom's big. So again, this might be a way for you to look at your references with your lit review to really pull out, oh, well, these are key things that it seems important in these references. So maybe I want to start coding there and looking at those first. You can also do some queries. So now I've brought in my my metadata right under the references here, which I showed you. So I have like the date of publication, and I've done some coding with the auto coding too. So I want to go here to explore and do a cross-tab query. So I'm just going to pick some codes. So I'm going to go to the auto coding actually, because it actually has more coding in it. So I'm going to pick boredom and creative. And because I have that metadata in the references, I'm going to ask it to compare by year. So are there, certain years of publication? So right now it's showing me the files coded, but I want to go to coding references, and I'll do a heat map so it's easier to see. So I can see, so in these years, more people talked about boredom than creativity. I mean, this might not tell you what you need, but it's just a way to look at the references in a different way. This can be exported if you want to put in a final report. You can create charts based on it, and so on. All right. And then another way this integrates with Citavi is if I go to my, let's pick one of the auto coding. So if I go to creative here, and I open this code, so I have a fair amount of references, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to export the code to a Word document. So I have my Word document, and you can see I have a Citavi add-in in the Word. So when I click on that, it'll bring the Citavi symbol. So I'll go to the Citavi pane, and I want to go to this project. So you can see it has my references right here. So one thing I can do, there's a couple things I can do. So I could start organizing the outline here. So I can insert this into the outline, actually into the Word document if I want. Oh, I think as I pick, so let me insert them. So you can see I could start organizing what I had in Citavi into this Word document based on this coding. So actually this is creativity, so I probably don't want that. Let me get rid of that. So yeah, creativity right there. And so I can bring in that information. So, and then I have, if I go to knowledge, I can actually bring in the information I had in Citavi here. So let's say I want to bring that in here. And so you can see it brought in that, in this case, look like a direct quote, and it has the actual, the citations that I need. So again, if I had something with methods, I could bring that. But you can see how, and maybe I don't want all this that I coded from NVivo, but maybe I want, I can always cut and copy and organize it in the Word document. So again, it jump starts my writing. So to me, this would be a great tool, because when I used NVivo for my dissertation, I'd export the codes, but now I could integrate my literature review with the coding I did and bring everything together. And so I show at the end. It will also start building my publication bibliography too here. So because I did one.
Could you also maybe say a little bit more about working in a team in Citavi and or in NVivo? Any suggestion for that? Because I have realized that this is a question that we get a lot from our Citavi customers. If you would like to say something about that.
Sure. So right now it would be separate from the softwares. Maybe going forward, we'll have something where you can work with both sort of at the same time, but we're not there yet. So for Citavi, so I'm in a local project. So I could though save this project to the cloud and then allow other people to access it. So you can do that with a desktop, Citavi 6. But we also have Citavi Web, which is a cloud-based product. So you could then work as a team. So I've done that with our research director, Silvana. It's very easy to use, but the Citavi Web would probably be your best option if you had a large, or teams typically are like 5 to 10 people, but they were dispersed around. I would suggest trying Citavi Web, and then you'd be able to work in the project in the cloud and actually see what people are doing in the project too. So that's for Citavi. For NVivo, I was showing you our desktop product. So you can work with NVivo a couple ways as a team. So one way is so let's say I have 3 people on my team. So I'm the project manager. I'm going to create the first NVivo project like you saw me do, but then I need to make a copy of it. So if I go to File and I go to Copy Project, I could create a copy of the project. I'm just not going to do it now, but it's easy to do. Copy of the project for my other 2 members on my team. So I typically would give the name of the project and add their initials to it, so I know who I'm giving which project to. And then what you can do is you can you'd have to send it to them over some kind of shared drive. They would download it on their own computer, work in it, and then when you want to see how everyone's worked together, you would go to import and go to project, and then you would need to browse and find their projects and merge them together. So that's one way. Another way is if I go to modules here, we have Collaboration Cloud. And this just makes it a lot easier for you to share projects. And I'll bring it up.
Ya sabemos que nuestras categorías deben estar organizadas en función de los objetivos de conocimiento que deseamos recoger o transmitir. No obstante, ya sabemos crear esas categorías también y sabemos crear subcategorías, y lo que vamos a ver es cómo agregar contenido a esas categorías. En primer lugar, viendo que estamos en la sección de títulos, lo que puedo hacer es agregar títulos, que serían agregar referencias. Sabemos ya que Citavi llama a las referencias de los distintos artículos, pues las denomina títulos, pero es lo mismo que referencias. Y si pulso en cualquier categoría, o incluso pulso en todos o sin categoría, ahora no tengo absolutamente ninguna referencia asociada a esta categoría, porque estoy pulsando en categorías que están vacías, pero si pulso en todos o en sin categoría, veo que tengo dos elementos y al pulsar me van a aparecer las dos referencias que tengo incluidas dentro de Citavi. Bien, para asignar una referencia a una categoría, pues lo único que tengo que hacer es pulsar y arrastrarla dentro de la categoría. Esta referencia estaría ahora dentro de la categoría tratamientos. Pero una referencia puede ser asignada a más de una categoría. Simplemente pulsando y arrastrando a cualquier otra categoría podría tener contenido este paper dentro de esta categoría, ¿de acuerdo? Podría estructurar los papers para que estuviesen en las categorías en las cuales vamos a citarlos, ¿de acuerdo? ¿Cómo elimino ahora este paper contenido en una determinada categoría? Bueno, si pulso, ahora veo que sí que tengo un paper asignado a una categoría y lo que voy a hacer es eliminarlo. Es decir, ya no quiero que esté asociado a esta categoría, pero no quiero borrar el paper. Una cosa es borrar el paper que tengo dentro de Citavi, lo elimino de Citavi, y otra cosa es eliminarlo de la categoría. Para eliminarlo de la categoría pulso en el botón derecho y pulso en retirar la categoría. Y esto lo que me hace, tras pulsar en aceptar, es mantenerme el artículo, pero ya no está asociado a esta categoría, sino que está asociado solamente a la categoría superior. En esta parte hemos visto cómo asignar una referencia dentro de una categoría, y eso lo hacemos estando dentro de la pestaña de títulos. Si vamos a la pestaña de conocimiento, puedo hacer lo propio, pero con el conocimiento, las citas que voy generando. Simplemente puedo bien ir creando citas y ir arrastrándolas, pero otra opción quizás incluso más interesante, simplemente cuando yo creo la propia cita dentro del trabajo, pues por ejemplo me voy a ir a donde he recogido esta cita, eso lo hago, veis que tenéis aquí un botoncito de hipervínculo, que lo que hace al pulsar es abrir el paper, es este botoncito de aquí, me abre el paper donde yo he creado esta cita, ¿de acuerdo? Y voy a minimizar esta parte, y si hago doble clic me va a abrir exactamente esa cita, ¿de acuerdo? Cuando me abre esa cita, esta no la tengo asignada a ninguna categoría, pero por ejemplo, podríamos ver que aquí en la parte superior tengo el tratamiento del iPad y el tratamiento por parche y los distintos protocolos de seguimiento de este paper. Y si me voy a la descripción, por ejemplo, del tratamiento del parche, dice que el tratamiento del parche se realizaba durante 2 horas diarias, durante 7 días a la semana y 16 semanas, y se hacía a través de, bueno, un parche adhesivo. Simplemente, si yo quiero recoger esta información dentro, pues por ejemplo, de los tipos de tratamiento, pues simplemente creo una cita. Al hacer doble clic, ya veis que tenéis aquí el tipo de cita, marca roja, podría poner bien marca roja. Aquí tenéis a la derecha las distintas estructuras, las distintas citas que ya hemos visto en la parte anterior, y podría asignarle un comentario, resumen, cita textual. Esto ya lo vimos también. Bueno, voy a seleccionar, por ejemplo, marca roja, y tengo la idea central, que es lo que recoge esta cita. Bueno, esta cita recoge el parche, la descripción del tratamiento con parche en régimen de 2 horas. ¿Cómo se hizo? Pues un parche adhesivo durante 2 horas al día, 7 días a la semana, 16 semanas. Y fijaos aquí lo que he hecho. Directamente yéndome a categorías, he asignado en categorías, he pulsado en categorías, aquí tengo la ventana, la he asignado a, aquí tengo el árbol de categorías y la he asignado a parche, ¿vale? Podría crear justo cuando creo la cita, puedo crear, si no tengo la categoría creada, la puedo crear de nuevo, ¿de acuerdo? Simplemente con estos botones de aquí arriba. Ya la tengo asociada. Y automáticamente al asociarla aquí, luego ya no voy a tener que arrastrarle porque me la va a asignar automáticamente a esta sección. Entonces aquí tengo la descripción del tratamiento de parche asignada a los tratamientos parche. Si me voy ahora a conocimiento de nuevo y me voy justo a parche, voy a ver que esa cita la tengo recogida. Aquí la tengo, la descripción era esta. Parche régimen 2 horas de descripción. Aquí en la vista previa veo lo que había añadido a la cita, esa idea, y el paper de donde he recogido esa idea. Fijaos esto qué sentido tiene. Si yo voy organizando muy bien todas estas ideas, bueno, todas estas citas, las voy organizando en la distinta estructura de nuestro trabajo, pues simplemente cuando esté redactando el trabajo, lo único que voy a tener que hacer es arrastrar las citas al documento Word. Eso lo veremos también más adelante. Bueno, ya hemos visto cómo poder ir agregando las referencias de los papers dentro de títulos. Bueno, voy a hacer que se visualicen todos los paneles. Estando dentro de títulos, ir asignando referencias a la distinta estructura, a distintas categorías, y si estamos en conocimiento, ir asignando las citas a las distintas categorías. También hemos visto que directamente cuando creo una referencia, o cuando creo, por ejemplo, una cita, pues directamente a la hora de crear la referencia y a la hora de crear la cita también puedo agregarlo directamente. Esto no lo he visto aquí, pero simplemente si os fijáis por aquí tengo también que este paper está asignado a un grupo y está asignado a la categoría tratamientos, que esta, en vez de añadirla por este lado a la hora de crear el artículo, lo he agregado simplemente arrastrando. Bueno, aquí tenéis un resumen de cómo se añaden bien papers a las categorías o bien conocimiento a través de citas a las categorías.